Living in a lighthouse, you learn that fog isn't just fog. It's a personality. Sometimes it drifts in gently, softening the edges of the world. Other times it crashes down like a physical wall, thick, cold, and utterly disorienting, swallowing sound and sight whole. That kind of fog changes things. It shrinks your world down to just the stone tower and the few yards of rock around its base. And sometimes it feels like things can move within it, unseen, unheard until they're right upon you. I had a night like that at Serpent's Tooth Light. A night when the fog brought an unexpected and deeply unwelcome visitor. The fog had rolled in thick that evening. One of those classic pea supers where you couldn't see the hand in front of your face, let alone the churning sea just below the cliffs. The automated foghorn had kicked in, its deep, mournful blast echoing out into the blank gray void every 30 seconds. It's a lonely sound, but usually comforting, a sign that everything's working, warning ships away. Tonight, though, muffled by the sheer density of the fog, it just sounded pathetic, lost. I was up in the lantern room, doing the routine evening checks. The big Fresnel lens rotated silently, its powerful beam slicing uselessly into the opaque wall of gray outside the glass. Everything seemed normal inside the tower. Generator humming steadily down below, weather instruments reading predictably damp. It was outside where the world had ceased to exist. Just the tower, the light, the horn, and the infinite silent fog pressing in. Around maybe 10 p.m., I was down in the small kitchen area, making coffee, the foghorn's blast vibrating faintly through the stone walls. Over the sound of the kettle starting to boil, I heard something else. Faint, muffled by the fog, but definitely there. A boat horn. Not the deep bellow of a large ship's foghorn, but a shorter, higher-pitched blast, like from a smaller vessel. And it sounded close. Dangerously close to the rocks below the lighthouse. My first thought was trouble. Someone lost in the fog, heading straight for the cliffs despite my light and horn. I hurried to the radio, intending to maybe broadcast a warning or listen for distress calls. But before I could switch it on, I heard the boat horn again. 2 short blasts this time. Still sounding way too close. Then, silence. No crunch of a hull hitting rock, no shouts, nothing. Just the returning pulse of my own foghorn and the hiss of the kettle. Okay. Weird. Maybe they realized their mistake at the last second and steered away. Or maybe the fog was playing tricks with the sound, making it seem closer than it was. Still, unsettling. I went to one of the thick glass windows in the lower level, wiped away the condensation, and peered out into the swirling gray. Nothing. Couldn't see more than 5 feet beyond the stone walls. Just impenetrable fog. I stood there listening for a long time. Heard nothing but the foghorn and the wind sighing around the tower. No more boat horns. No sounds of distress. Maybe it was nothing. Decided to get back to my coffee. As I turned from the window, I heard another sound. This one was much closer. A soft scraping noise, followed by a dull thud, coming from the base of the lighthouse, near the heavy wooden entrance door. Like maybe a boat's fender bumping against the small rocky landing down below. Or someone scrambling on the rocks. My heart started pounding. Had someone actually landed? In this fog? Why? And who? The supply boat wasn't due for another week. No other ship should have any reason to come this close, especially in this weather. I moved silently to the heavy entrance door, listening intently. Heard nothing now but the foghorn's cycle. Was I imagining things? The isolation, the fog, the weird boat horn. Maybe it was making me jumpy. But I couldn't shake the feeling. Someone or something felt close. I checked the heavy bolts on the inside of the door. Solid. Climbed partway up the winding metal stairs, peering down through one of the narrow slit windows that faced the landing area. Saw only swirling gray fog. If someone was down there, the fog hid them completely. Then a soft knock echoed up the stairwell. Knock, knock, knock. On the heavy wooden entrance door downstairs. I froze on the stairs, every muscle tight. It wasn't loud, not demanding. Just a soft, persistent rapping. Someone was definitely down there, right outside my door. Trapped in this tower, miles from anywhere, in impenetrable fog, with an unknown visitor knocking at the base. Panic started to claw its way up my throat. Who could it possibly be? Shipwreck survivor? Possible. But wouldn't they be shouting for help? Frantic? A lost fisherman? Maybe. But why knock so softly? Why not call out? My mind raced through possibilities, none of them comforting. What if it wasn't someone needing help? What if it was someone else? Someone the fog had brought? The knocking stopped. Silence returned, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the foghorn and my own ragged breathing. I waited. Seconds stretched into minutes, maybe they'd gone. Given up, I crept back down the stairs, listening intently. Nothing. Reached the bottom, stood near the door, ear pressed against the cold wood. Silence. Should I open it? Crack it open, see who's there. The thought terrified me. What if they forced their way in? I was alone here, completely isolated. No one would hear me scream over the foghorn in the wind. Decided against it. Better safe than sorry. Whatever was out there could wait until the fog lifted, or announced themselves properly. Then the scraping sound started again. Right outside the door this time. A soft, wet scraping, like maybe seaweed being dragged across the stone, or clothing brushing against the wood. It moved slowly along the base of the door, then stopped, followed by a soft, wet thump, like something heavy and damp being set down right on the doorstep. Then silence again. Utter silence. I stood frozen behind the bolted door for what felt like an eternity. What was that? What did they leave? Why? It felt like some kind of strange offering, or maybe a marker. The urge to unbolt the door and look was almost overwhelming, but fear kept me rooted. I spent the rest of the night wide awake, sitting on the bottom step of the spiral staircase, staring at the heavy wooden door, listening. No more knocking, no more scraping. Just the rhythmic moan of the foghorn and the occasional sigh of wind. The feeling of presence just outside the door slowly, eventually, faded. Or maybe I just got numb to it. The fog finally started to lift with the dawn. Slowly, reluctantly, the gray shroud thinned, revealing the churning sea below, the jagged rocks, the empty horizon. I waited until the sun was fully up, burning away the last wisps of mist, before I dared to unbolt the door. Took a deep breath, pulled the heavy door inward just a crack, and peered out. Nothing. No one there. The small rocky landing was empty, wet from the night's dampness. No sign of a boat moored below. No footprints visible on the bare rock. It was as if no one had ever been there, except for the thing on the doorstep, right where I'd heard the soft thump. It wasn't seaweed. It was a small, smooth, perfectly round stone, almost black, glistening whitely. Beside it lay 3 identical white seagull feathers, arranged carefully in a small fan shape. Nothing inherently sinister, maybe just weird beach debris. But after the knocking, the scraping, the feeling of presence, it felt deliberate, meaningful, like a message I couldn't decipher, left by a visitor who came and went unseen in the fog. I got out of there as soon as my contract allowed. The official explanation for the boat horn was probably atmospheric conditions playing tricks with sound. The knocking? Maybe just debris hitting the door in the wind? The object on the step? Weird coincidence. Rational explanations exist. But the feeling of that night, the thick fog, the unseen visitor, the soft knock, the strange offering left behind. It lingers. It makes you wonder what the fog hides and who or what might come knocking when the world disappears into the gray. The thing about lighthouses is the stairs. Endless, winding, usually metal stairs, spiraling up and up inside a narrow stone tube. During the day, they're just stairs. Annoying maybe after the fifth trip up to the lantern room, but just stairs. At night, though, at night when you're the only living soul for miles around, those same stairs become a perfect echo chamber. Every creak, every scuff of your own shoes bounces off the curved walls, sounding way too loud in the silence. And sometimes you hear sounds that aren't yours. That's when the climb gets really, really unnerving. Happened to me constantly at Black Rock Point. Black Rock was one of those tall, classic towers perched dramatically on a windswept cliff. Automated like most these days, but needed regular checks, especially the foghorn equipment, which was prone to icing up in winter. I drew the short straw for a 2-week maintenance stint in deep January. Just me, the tower, the howling wind, and the grumpy North Atlantic. From day one, the stairs got to me. They were old iron, bolted directly into the stone walls, winding tightly upwards for maybe 8 or 9 levels. Every step I took clanged and echoed up and down the shaft. Fine, expected. What wasn't expected was hearing other sounds. It started subtly. I'd be halfway up, maybe heading to the lantern room, and I'd stop for a second to catch my breath. And in the silence after my own clanging stopped, I'd hear it. A faint scuff or a soft clink from maybe a level or two above me. Just a single sound, quickly swallowed by the wind whistling around the tower. Easy to dismiss. House settling, right? Or maybe a bird got inside somehow, dislodging something. But it kept happening. Every time I used the stairs, especially at night, I'd hear these faint, solitary sounds. Sometimes it sounded like a single, soft footstep on the metal, grating a floor above. Sometimes a metallic scrape, like a boot buckle hitting a railing, from just below me after I'd passed. It was never sustained, never sounded like someone actually walking up or down. Just these isolated, out-of-place noises that always seemed to happen when I was moving, or just after I stopped. Paranoia starts quick when you're alone in a place like that. Was I imagining it? Was it just the wind creating weird acoustic effects and a tower? Very possible. The tower was old, full of drafts. Metal expands and contracts with temperature changes. Logical explanations abounded, but the timing felt weird. The sounds always seemed reactive to my presence on the stairs. I started testing it. I'd climb halfway up, then stand completely still for 5 minutes, listening intently, usually silence. But then, the moment I took another step, I might hear that faint scuff from above, or the clink from below. It felt responsive, like something was shadowing me just out of sight, mimicking my pauses and starts. Then came the footsteps, or what sounded exactly like footsteps. One night, I was heading down from the lantern room after doing a late check. About halfway down, maybe the 5th level, I stopped abruptly. And clear as day, I heard it from the level above me, the one I just left. Clang. 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 3 distinct, slow footsteps on the iron stairs, sounding exactly like my own heavy work boots on the metal. Then silence. My heart hammered. Okay, that was not the wind. That was not the building settling. That sounded precisely like someone taking 3 slow steps down towards me, then stopping the moment I stopped. I stood frozen, straining my ears. Nothing, just the howl of the wind outside. Hello? I called out, my voice echoing weirdly up and down the shaft. Anyone there? Silence, of course. Slowly, cautiously, I started climbing back up towards the level where the footsteps had sounded. Moved as quietly as I could, which wasn't very quiet on those clanging. Reached the landing. Empty. Looked up towards the lantern room. Empty. Looked down. Empty. Nothing. Just the bare stone walls. The iron stairs, the shadows, but I knew what I heard. From then on, using the stairs felt like walking through enemy territory. Every trip up or down was filled with tense listening, pausing, trying to catch the phantom follower. Sometimes I heard nothing. Other times, the faint scuffs or clinks. And maybe twice more over the next week, I heard those distinct, slow footsteps, always seeming to be just one level away, always stopping when I stopped. Never saw anything. Never found any sign of another person. It messed with my head, badly. Was I losing it? Was the isolation, the wind, the echoing sounds finally getting to me, making me hallucinate? Or was there genuinely someone else in the tower? A squatter hiding somehow, a ghost? If it was a person, how did they stay hidden? Where? The lighthouse wasn't that big once you were inside. The last few days of my stint were marked by a rising sense of dread. I started avoiding the stairs as much as possible, doing my checks quickly, almost running up and down, trying not to pause, not to listen. But I always listened. Couldn't help it. The final night, a nasty storm blew in, even worse than usual. Wind screamed around the tower like tortured souls. Rain hammered against the lantern glass. I had to go up one last time to check for leaks around the lamp assembly. The climb felt treacherous, the whole tower seeming to sway slightly in the most violent gusts. About halfway up, the emergency generator powering the lamp sputtered. The main power lines must have gone down in the storm. The main lights in the stairwell died, plunging me into near darkness, lit only by my headlamp beam bouncing off the wet stone walls. And then I heard them. Footstep, not faint this time, loud, hurried, clanging down the stairs from above me, coming closer, fast, clang, 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 clang. It sounded heavy, frantic, like someone running down towards me in the dark. Panic seized me, headlamp beam shaking. I looked up the spiral staircase, saw nothing but shadows and the curve of the stairs above. But the footsteps were getting closer, echoing louder and louder. I turned and scrambled back down, stumbling, half falling down the iron steps, convinced someone or something was right behind me. Reached the bottom level, slammed the heavy door leading into the keeper's quarters shut, threw the bolt, leaned against it, gasping, listening. The footsteps stopped, right outside the door at the base of the stairs. Silence, except for the storm raging outside and the frantic pounding in my chest. I stayed there, pressed against the door, for what felt like hours, until the storm finally started to ease, and the gray light of dawn began to filter through the windows. When my relief finally arrived later that morning via helicopter, I didn't say a word about the footsteps. Just handed over the keys, grabbed my gear, and got on the chopper. Not even looking back at Black Rock Point. I was out, safe, the immediate terror resolved. But the memory of those footsteps on the stairs, that lingers. Especially the final frantic descent in the dark during the storm. Was it just the storm's fury creating bizarre echoes in the tower? Was it my own fear manifesting as auditory hallucinations? Or was Black Rock Point not quite as solitary as it seemed? I still don't know. All I know is that climbing narrow, echoing staircases, especially metal ones, gives me a cold feeling now. And I always listen for sounds coming from the floor above. Part of the gig at remote lighthouses involves keeping an eye on the shoreline around the base, especially after storms. You check for damage to the foundations, sure, but also for debris washed ashore. Mostly it's just driftwood, tangled fishing gear, maybe some unfortunate seabirds. Sometimes, though, the sea throws something unexpected onto the rocks. Something that feels less like random flotsam and more like a message. Found something like that after a big nor'easter at Granite Peak Light, and it left me feeling watched by more than just the waves. Granite Peak was way out there, perched on a rocky island maybe a mile offshore, connected only by a long, often wave-battered causeway at low tide, and serviced by boat otherwise. My job was a 6-week stint covering for the regular keeper's leave. Pretty standard stuff: maintenance, weather logs, keeping the light and foghorn operational. The first few weeks were uneventful, filled with the usual stunning sunsets, howling winds, and profound isolation. Then the storm hit. It was a monster. 3 days of hurricane-force winds and mountainous waves crashing against the island. Spray flying clear over the top of the lantern room sometimes. Felt like the whole tower was shuddering. I mostly stayed hunkered down in the keeper's quarters, checking the lamp periodically, making sure nothing critical broke. When the storm finally blew itself out on the third morning, it left behind calm seas, an eerily clear sky, and a coastline completely rearranged by the pounding surf. Part of my post-storm check was walking the perimeter of the small island at low tide, assessing erosion and looking for damage. The amount of debris washed up was incredible. Huge logs torn from somewhere up the coast, tangles of unrecognizable netting, shattered pieces of what might have been a small boat, and tons of seaweed. I was picking my way through a particularly thick patch of kelp near the base of the cliffs on the seaward side when I saw it. It was a bottle. Dark green glass, thick, old-looking, corked tight, and sealed with wax. The classic message in a bottle scenario. Probably just some kid's hopeful message tossed into the waves years ago. Finally washed up. Still, kinda cool. I had picked it up, rinsed off the seaweed. The wax seal looked ancient, but intact. Inside, I could see a small roll of paper. Back up in the keeper's quarters, curiosity outweighing my usual caution, I carefully broke the wax seal and worked the old cork out. It crumbled slightly as it came free. The air inside the bottle smelled faintly of brine and old paper. I managed to carefully extract the rolled up paper with a pair of tweezers from the first aid kit. It wasn't modern paper. It felt thick, textured, almost like parchment, yellowed with age and water stains, though remarkably preserved. Unrolling it carefully, I saw it wasn't a letter. It was a drawing, done in faded black ink. And it was disturbing. The drawing depicted the Granite Peak Lighthouse itself, instantly recognizable. But it wasn't a normal drawing. The perspective was slightly off, distorted, like looking through a warped lens. The sea around the base wasn't drawn as waves, but as grasping, tentacle-like shapes reaching up towards the tower. And circling the tower, in the sky, weren't gulls, but strange. Elongated figures with too many limbs, sketched with frantic, scratchy lines. At the very top, where the lamp should be, the artist had drawn a single, huge, unblinking eye, its gaze directed outwards, towards the viewer. Underneath the drawing in shaky, archaic script were 3 words. It still watches. I stared at the drawing, a cold knot forming in my stomach. This wasn't a kid's message. This felt old and deeply unsettling. Who drew this? When? Was it some previous keeper, driven mad by isolation? Or a sailor from a ship wrecked on these rocks long ago, leaving a final, cryptic warning? The style felt frantic, fearful. It still watches. What watches? The sea. The lighthouse itself, depicted as an eye? Or something else? I checked the bottle again. No other markings. Checked the paper. Nothing on the back. Just a disturbing drawing and those three chilling words. I put it down on the table, feeling suddenly uneasy in the bright, post-storm sunlight flooding the room. The silence of the lighthouse felt different now, charged with the echo of that century-old fear. Over the next few days, I couldn't get the drawing out of my head. I started seeing the lighthouse differently. The way the shadows fell on the rocks at sunset looked like grasping shapes. The cry of the gulls sounded strained, almost mocking. When I went up to the lantern room, I couldn't help but feel like the giant Fresnel lens was an eye, watching me, watching the sea. The phrase, "it still watches," became a mantra of unease. I tried researching old lighthouse records online during my brief periods of internet connectivity via satellite. Looked for shipwrecks near Granite Peak, trying to date the bottle, the drawing. Found records of several wrecks over the centuries, but nothing that directly matched or explained the drawing. Looked up previous keepers. Found mentions of a couple who served in the late 1800s or early 1900s, who reportedly left their posts abruptly or suffered from melancholia, but no concrete details, no mention of strange drawings or beliefs. The mystery remained locked in the bottle. One evening, near the end of my stint, I was outside on the gallery railing just below the lamp, watching the sunset paint the sky in incredible colors. The sea was calm now, almost glassy. As I looked down towards the rocks where I'd found the bottle, I saw something. A flicker of movement in one of the deeper tide pools left exposed by the receding water. Probably just a crab or a fish trapped by the tide. But in the context of the drawing, the logbook entry from the other lighthouse story echoing, and the words "it still watches," my imagination went into overdrive. Was that just a crab? Or was it something else, slick and dark, shifting just beneath the surface, looking up at the tower? Looking up at me? I backed away from the railing, heart pounding, went inside, bolted the door. The rational part of me knew it was ridiculous. Stress, isolation, a creepy drawing found after a storm, perfect recipe for paranoia. But the fear felt real. The drawing felt like a genuine warning, resonating across time. My relief arrived on schedule a few days later. I handed over the duties, mentioning the storm damage, but not the bottle. As the boat pulled away from the island, I looked back at Granite Peak Light, standing tall and solitary against the horizon. It looked impassive, just stone and glass and light. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and aware resided there. In the deep water around its base, perhaps, or within the tower itself. Something that watches. Finding the bottle, seeing the drawing, that was the discovery. Leaving the island was the escape. But the message lingers. It still watches. It left me with a profound sense of unease about the vast, unexplored depths of the ocean and the secrets hidden away in lonely places like lighthouses. Sometimes the sea doesn't just give up driftwood, it gives up warnings. And you're left wondering if you were meant to find them and what exactly you're being warned about.